Our final story this morning is a very powerful and personal one for our good friend Michelle. She's been reporting for nearly 20 years at CBS News. Michelle has covered landmark social justice stories and life-changing natural disasters like Hurricane Katrina. Now, she's telling her own story, sharing a painful family secret that lasted for her entire life. Her new memoir, Belonging, A Daughter's Search for Identity Through Loss and Love, focuses on the mother who abandoned her. She writes, as a motherless child, I had learned that identity is shaped as much by those who are absent in our lives as those who stand by our side. Michelle, let's talk a little bit about this book. Now, your father is African-American.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother is Latino.
Yes.
And she presented as white, as you said it.
She looked white. The way she was described to me early on was that she was white. So it was sort of this vagueness. People didn't talk about, my dad, my grandmother didn't really talk about her very much outside of the fact that she was, quote unquote, Caucasian.
So when did you learn how much race played a role in her abandonment?
Not until elementary school, which is where we all find those discoveries about who we are and our place in this world. And it was sort of stark. I'm from South Central Los Angeles, and everyone around me were nuclear family. So being the child who went to school with her grandmother and her father present and no mom, that's when the question started.
What you do that is so powerful in this book, and I think will be so relatable to so many people, is you explain how you can have a roof over your head, loving people in your life, food on the table, but still, because of this absence, have this sense of loss that creeps in to the corners of your life. Could you talk about that?
Yes, no. So for me, I was never angry as a child. It seemed to make sense to me. My dad would describe my origin story like this. Your mother and father fell in love. We had you. Then your mother couldn't be there anymore. She left your father and you. And it just, okay, my dad never really talked about it. My grandmother didn't talk about it. It wasn't until I had my own children that it started to creep in a way, this need for acknowledgement, because it was my children now who were being deprived of the knowledge of their ancestry. And so the tale in the book really takes you through this evolution of how I feel and felt about my mother in her absence as a child, through my adolescence, and then as an adult and having my own children.
One of the many tragedies in the book is the tragedy that you discover, which is your mother, your birth mother, and your father were actually deeply in love. She had a love for him that you believe to be genuine.
Yes, and I believe my father loved her. My father is a character in this book. Love him deeply. I have so much pride for him because he was a wonderful father. But they had this long-standing relationship for 7 years. How do you have a 7-year relationship with someone who, one, was married?
Yeah, that's another complication. There's a lot of layers
huge complication.
here.
But when her parents and her family found out that she was even dating a black man, this isn't a Latinx family in Los Angeles, California, working class. They too were marginalized, and yet the thought was, it's him or us. It's him or us. And so she lived with this secret. It wasn't a secret that I lived with. Anyone who ever asked me about it, I was always very clear about in what I knew. But the secret hanging over me is probably why I live out loud the way I do, as you well know. I'm an out loud liver. But I'm sure it had an impact on the way I am.
And you mentioned self-worth, which I think it's something we all struggle with throughout our lives. And how has getting all of this out in this format allowed you to see yourself in a different way?
Oh, I'm still grappling with that.
Yeah?
I'm still in the process of that. You know, people, when they say they write a book, it seems as though it's been their therapy. It is like, oh, I've solved all the problems. I am still very, I'm grappling with it all.
Yeah.
Acknowledgement is really important to me. It's important not only
important to all of us,
personally, it is, and that is why I think I cover the stories I do, to acknowledge people who are oftentimes left unacknowledged. It's
That's a common thread through your work.
Yeah. It's a common thread. It really is. Yeah. And I really have to thank CBS Mornings, at the time CBS This Morning, for this book. Brian Bingham, our senior producer, I'm sure he has a loftier title then, but he was our senior producer. And he assigned a story to me that aired 5 days or 6 days after George Floyd's murder, in which he asked me to, through all of the coverage I've done over the last 30 years in covering policing and communities and the struggles in between, to give a perspective on why this seemed like a different moment, the 2020 protests, the social justice movement.
Yeah.
And I took a 20-second turn, and I turned the lens on why racism has impacted me. And it's obvious. I was my mother's secret.
It cost you your mother. And your family, your father is a renowned surgeon. He was the first person on the scene when Bobby Kennedy was shot in California. And yet, despite the wonders of your family, this other person's family said, no, we can't be part of that. And the loss that they suffered for not knowing you. I don't want to give away the end of the book, but what's so powerful about it is you go on this journey, you find the people who weren't there, and you get to ask the questions. And I think it's a dream for a lot of people.
Yes, and I acknowledge those who were there, those who stayed, those who came into my life to raise me. And I have created a beautiful family.
There's a love story here.
And friends. And I can't thank you all enough for being great colleagues.
Oh, thank you.
Great
I love the part with you,
proud of
Mark.
you.
How you met, the meet cute,
Belonging,
dating.
it goes on sale tomorrow. We'll be right back.
Seriously,
Thank
congratulations.
You. Thank you.